Hello everyone, tonight we are standing knee-deep in warm insect-filled ferns somewhere in the late Cretaceous. The air is heavy, the trees are weeping sap, and something's rustling over there. No, not elegantly, not like a predator on the prowl. This is more of a whump-thud-whump, like someone lost their balance 10 minutes ago and just never stopped tumbling forward. That something is you. You're not very big yet. In fact, you're barely longer than a modern dog and way less coordinated. You lurch sideways into a mossy root bounce off a log and somehow end up in a shallow ditch feet in the air. And still, you wriggle upright, still breathing, still moving. Your name wouldn't sound like anything to modern ears, but in bone speak, you're known for one very specific thing. You absolutely cannot walk in a straight line. One hip's a little higher, your right foot turns out like a busted shopping trolley, and your tail always sags slightly to the left. You were hatched this way out of a leathery sand-covered egg cracked open under a red sunrise. Your siblings got the good legs. They're already jogging like tiny athletes toward the safety of a fern curtain. You, though, you're flailing like you're doing an interpretive dance no one asked for. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's listening to Dinosaur Chaos from where. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The first time you notice something is off is the first time you try to follow your brood. They all seem to know how to lift one foot, shift weight balance. Your left side lags behind. You end up walking in a gentle curve, drifting to the right like a canoe in crosswind. Your brain says forward, your legs say, well, we'll try. It's not pain yet, but it's definitely not easy. And already the forest is watching. There's a noise above you, distant but real. Something with feathers and a long snout glides silently between cycads. You freeze. You might be clumsy, but you're not clueless. Survival doesn't require grace, it requires awareness. And you bizarre little hatchling are wide awake. You shuffle deeper into the ferns, your tail dragging and eyes darting. You don't walk, you pinball. Even baby insects try to move away. Your legs don't align properly. Some ancestral tendon somewhere is tighter than it should be. A mutation maybe. One that in any sane world would mean you're a snack before sunset. But the world isn't sane. It's 76 million years ago, and things like you get weird breaks. Even now you're fast. Not fast like a hawk diving, but fast like a rock slide, uncontrolled, loud, terrifying in motion. You do not run so much as hurl yourself forward. It's not uncommon to smack your skull on a tree root or belly slide downhill, but each time miraculously, you get back up. A week passes, you survive, others don't. One of your siblings miscalculates a leap over a stream. Gone. Another wanders too far from the group. Feathered screams echo, gone. You bump into things too loudly to get snuck up on. You zig when you should zag, or sometimes when you shouldn't zag. It's not intentional, but it works. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had a specific run-to-live instinct hardwired, or if it was more like jazz improvised survival. You're a jazz solo of wrong-footed momentum. One day, the sun breaks through and you emerge from the brush to drink. A shallow pool scattered with iridescent beetles invites you in. You approach, but even cautiously, your stride veers left, overshoots, and lands you half in the water, eyes full of mud. Behind you, something growls. A troodontid. Slender, smiling maybe. You wouldn't know what fear is if it wasn't already built into your bones. You do the only thing you know how to do, you panic run. But it's not a straight run. It's a whipping, spiraling, chaotic zigzag through fallen branches and vines. The troodontid leaps, claws extended, and misses because you, in pure accident, swerve to sneeze at that exact second. You keep going. You bash through a termite mound. You slide under a fern arch that's barely fern anymore. You break open a dead log and leave a trail of fungus behind you. The predator. It tries to follow, but even it can't track your inconsistent rhythm. You're like a skipping stone with a vendetta. At some point, the forest swallows you again and the predator gives up. You're too strange. Too fast in the wrong ways. Too much. Later curled under a fungal root system, you tremble, but you're alive. You itch where the beetles crawled up your thigh. You bleed a little from your toe, but you're not eaten. That counts as winning. Odd fact of the day. Some ants in the Cretaceous evolved to explode as a defense mechanism. You're not quite at that level, but your chaos seems to have a similar effect. The wind hisses through the ferns. Above you, clouds gather in lazy swirls. Your heartbeat steadies. You won't sleep not well, but you'll rest. You've earned it. Even crooked from birth, you're still here. The older you get, the stranger your body feels. Your legs have grown sure, but one still slightly longer. Your spine twists just enough to throw off your balance, and your hips make a faint click whenever you pivot too fast. You've stopped trying to keep up with straight-walking dinosaurs. You don't walk like them. You can't. What you've developed instead is something, well, unique. You lean. Not on purpose, not like a cool rebel posing against a tree. More like a drifting shopping cart that always pulls hard to the left. When you try to run straight, your body turns it into a strange arc. If there were prehistoric race lanes painted on the ground, you'd get disqualified by the first corner. Every step is a compromise between what your muscles want to do and what your bones will allow. That's when you start to realize something interesting. The more you lean into the problem, literally, the easier it becomes to stay upright. It's like dancing with your own imbalance. You adapt. Instead of trying to correct your movement, you exaggerate it. You pivot into your turns early. You throw your weight into each stride. You stop thinking about going straight and start planning in curves. And here's the kicker that works. One day while chasing a beetle, and let's be honest, you weren't really hungry, you were just bored. You overshoot a log and roll forward. But this time, instead of sprawling, you bounce. You bounce, twist, plant your good foot, and somehow by pure accident or weird instinct, you launch. The beetle vanishes in a poof of dust. You don't care. You just realized something: you can move fast. You just have to stop pretending you're normal. Historians still debate whether this kind of biomechanical compensation is instinctive or learned. Is it something the dinosaur brain figures out over time, or just a random accident of daily clumsiness? You don't have the answer. You only know that when you shift your weight just right, you can pick up incredible speed. The next few weeks you train without meaning to. Chasing bugs, escaping falling branches, vaulting over rivulets. You stumble, you fail, but your body is tuning itself like a badly strung instrument, figuring out how to sound good anyway. By month's end, you've got what we could only describe as the bounce step. It's half gallop, half flail. You push harder with your stronger leg, swing your tail low to counterbalance, and use the momentum of your own imbalance to propel yourself forward. It looks ridiculous. It feels glorious. You become the lopsided comet of your small ecosystem. Odd fact of the day: horses can't throw up. Completely unrelated but useful if you ever invent time travel and need to impress one. Now, even predators are starting to notice. They don't understand you, but they notice. One stalks you for nearly half a day, tail swaying behind the shrubs, eyes locked on your every move. It waits, watches, calculates. You meanwhile are doing a slow sideways scoot across a fallen tree. You look like you're sneaking into a party you weren't invited to. And then snap a twig. You flinch, but your flinch becomes a step. That step becomes a pivot. That pivot becomes a launch. You don't run, you swerve. Behind you, the predator bolts forward, but your body is already throwing itself into a left-tilted arc, skipping like a flat stone across the forest floor. You don't follow straight trails. You carve a chaotic wake. You don't know how long you run, only that when you stop, the forest is quiet again. The predator gave up again. You're not faster than them in the traditional sense, Your top speed is nowhere near the fastest theropods, but your acceleration is shocking. Your ability to twist to veer off to throw your own body like a slingshot, it's not predictable. And that unpredictability is survival. You start to play with this. On your own time and quiet places, you experiment. You turn faster. You fake one way, go the other. You even stumble on purpose to see what your legs will do. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you smash your face into moss. Still, you refine the motion. There is a ridge you begin to frequent. The incline helps you practice momentum. Up and down, over and over. One day, another juvenile joins you. Not quite as bent as you, but clearly not straight either. Their neck curves awkwardly to the right. You both run together badly. It's awkward, hilarious, kind of beautiful. It's the first time you felt something like a bond. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had social empathy. Some believe they were mostly solitary. Others point to nesting behavior, communal tracks, or even healed injuries, suggesting care. You don't think about any of that. You just know that the crooked-necked juvenile shares your rhythm, and that matters. Together you run through dusk, making strange spirals across the open field. Insects rise behind you. The grass flattens in tangled paths. You feel oddly in control. Night falls. The stars come out spinning slow above the canopy. You rest side by side with your new friend, breathing deep. Your foot still points the wrong way. Your hip still ticks like a faulty gear. But you're alive. You're fast. And even if you never walk straight, you're starting to believe you were never supposed to. It begins like any other morning, with mist rising off the damp earth and insects making too much noise about nothing. You stretch your legs, one clicks, the other refuses, and roll to your feet in that signature, not quite coordinated flop. You're taller now, leaner. The clumsy hatchling wobble has matured into a confident but still deeply weird stride. Your friend, the crooked-necked one, is nearby, chewing on something tough and green and definitely not delicious. You both keep one eye on the tree line. Not because of paranoia, because of memory. Because of that day. The day when you first learned what real danger felt like. It started with silence. No birds chirping, no insects clicking, no distant hooting from the canopy. Just that deep, soft kind of hush that only arrives when something very good at killing is nearby. You were alone when it happened, just trying to scavenge half-rotted fruit from the side of a dry stream. You didn't hear the predator approach, not until its shadow slid across the pebbles beside you. It wasn't big. In fact, it looked almost elegant. A dromaeosaurid, maybe. A sleek, smart-eyed terror with feathers and claws that curved like the wind had carved them. You froze. For once, your body locked in place. No zig, no zag, just stillness. Then, like someone pressed fast forward, it lunged. You didn't think, you tilted. Not a full dodge, not a jump. Just a fast collapse into a sharp left lean, your instinctive maneuver that looks more like a trip than a choice. Its claws swiped air. You scrambled, panicked, scrambled again, legs pumping in chaotic bursts. You flung your weight in the wrong directions on purpose. One foot planted in a puddle and twisted. Your tail whipped wildly to compensate. You were a tornado of bad form and accidental brilliance. The predator tried to keep up, but your movement was the opposite of rhythm. No pattern, no direction. You crashed through a fallen log. You did a full accidental spin. You even ran directly at a tree, then veered off so sharply it snapped a tendon in your pursuer's mind, if not its leg. Historians still debate whether such movement was strategic camouflage by confusion. There's modern evidence that some prey species survive by creating visual dissonance, flashing stripes. Erratic flight. You were doing it before it was trendy. The predator gave up, not because it was tired, but because you made chasing feel like solving a riddle written by a drunk beetle. You collapsed behind a moss curtain, panting. Your ribs ached. Your knee throbbed. But you laughed, or the dinosaur version of a laugh anyway, 3 short, rattling huffs and a puff through your nostrils. That was the first time you realized your imbalance wasn't a flaw. It was a shield made of chaos. Odd fact of the day. Some early amphibians had spiral teeth. Not because it was efficient, but because nature sometimes forgets what it's doing and just goes with it. From that day, you changed. Not just physically, though, your muscles learned to tense in all the right weird ways. You changed mentally. You leaned into being unpredictable. And so, the next time it happened, the next time a predator crept from the bracken with pupils narrow and hungry, you didn't freeze. You danced. It wasn't graceful. More like someone kicked a sack of sticks off a cliff. But you moved with purpose inside the chaos. A stutter step here, a fake stumble there. You ran left then right for no reason at all. You even tripped over a root somersaulted and ended up back on your feet. The predator growled. You grinned. That's when the other dinosaurs started watching. They didn't understand you at first. Your flockmates, or maybe rivals, tried to copy your movements, but they lacked the original injury. They lacked the reason behind the motion. Without that, they just looked like drunk toddlers on stilts. But you weren't pretending. You were improvising from reality. That's what made it work. Historians still debate whether mimicry in prehistoric species led to evolutionary dead ends or breakthroughs. Copying isn't always survival. Sometimes it's just flattery. But not for you. You were the real deal. And as the seasons shifted, your style began to shape your place in the ecosystem. Predators started thinking twice. Prey started panicking sooner. You, the dinosaur that couldn't walk straight, became the one that couldn't be caught. You and the crooked-necked companion stuck close. You both understood each other's oddities, even if you couldn't explain them. Nights became safer when shared. Days became games of who could out-weird the other in a chase. And it wasn't just fun. It was training. Because the world didn't care about your quirks, it still wanted to eat you. So every ridiculous gallop, every sideways slide, every leap that started as a trip and ended as a miracle, it was all sharpening the one tool you'd been given, a broken gate that made you unbreakable. You don't remember the exact moment it became second nature. Maybe it was during a sprint to avoid a falling branch. Maybe it was when you slipped on wet leaves and turned the stumble into a flying arc that landed you perfectly behind a rock. Either way, your body stopped fighting its shape and started inventing a new language of movement, lopsided, swaying, jagged like a heartbeat under stress. It's called the side hop. You didn't name it. No one did. But it was unmistakable. One foot launched harder, the other caught like a pivot, and your tail snapped to the side like a whip, shifting your direction mid-run. It felt like falling and flying at the same time. And once you figured that out, you used it constantly. The first time you side-hopped to escape a predator, it was almost a joke. A younger carnivore still learning how to hunt crept out behind a boulder with that overconfident look you'd seen before. You were picking through berries, too distracted by an itch in your neck scales to notice. It pounced. You side-hopped. The predator flew past you, literally passed like a comet that had been aiming for the moon and hit a birdbath instead. You didn't even look back. Just kept bouncing, pivoting, zigzagging through underbrush like you were possessed by a rhythm only you could hear. Odd fact of the day. Some ancient dragonflies had wingspans longer than your torso. No joke. They'd look like aircraft if you saw them now. Sometimes one of them would dart past your face and startle you, mid-hop, adding just the right chaos boost. Now you train in bursts. Wake, eat, sprint crookedly between trees, hop sideways around fallen logs, scare smaller creatures on purpose just to force react. It's not cruelty, it's curiosity. Your body wants to test everything. Can you hop on one foot across a slope? Can you spin halfway through a sprint to change direction? Yes, and yes. The side hop becomes not just a trick, it becomes strategy. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs practiced movement consciously or only reacted instinctively. Did they rehearse or just survive? You, though, are clearly rehearsing. Even your companion, the crooked-necked one, has picked up a version of the move. though theirs looks more like a crab sidestepping a wave. Together, you start weaving paths through your territory. Not trails, tricks. Places where a quick turn could make a predator trip. Where a bush hides a pit or a slick patch of moss becomes a launch pad. You're building a mental map of chaos and it's working. Then one day you're not alone anymore. Another juvenile joins. This one has a jaw that doesn't close all the way, which makes their chewing sound a little moist. Not pleasant, but they can move. Not fast, but smart. They learn your patterns quickly, adapt, add their own flair. Soon there are four of you. A wobbly little pack of misfits. From the outside, it must look absurd. A herd of twitchy, crooked dinosaurs prancing through the woods like wind-up toys gone rogue. But you are effective. More than that, you're powerful in a way no one saw coming. You start to hunt together. Not big prey. You're not stupid. But small lizards, birds, sometimes the eggs of other species. You learn to herd them into traps, not with precision, but with unpredictability. One of you startles from the left, another trips on purpose to draw attention, while you side-hop in and out like a living boomerang. It works. More often than not, it works. One day, you take down a juvenile hadrosaur. Not through strength, but by outmaneuvering it until it collapses from confusion. You stare at the carcass afterward, unsure if you're supposed to feel proud or just dizzy. Oddly enough, that's when you notice something strange straightwalkers are starting to copy you. From a distance in the shadows, others are watching your odd moves. One tries the side hop and immediately eats dirt. Another stumbles through a pivot and bruises its tail. They're trying, but it's not in their bones the way it is in yours. And that makes you feel something fierce. Historians still debate whether social learning played a significant role in dinosaur behavior. Some species may have imitated successful strategies. Others may have remained stubbornly stuck in instinct. You represent the experiment mid-evolution. The forest begins to reflect your new rhythm. Prey becomes twitchier. Predators more cautious. Even the wind seems to swerve now. And yet the world keeps pressing forward. One morning while sprinting across a narrow ridge, you misjudge a side hop. You slip. Your foot catches in a root. You tumble not gracefully, not strategically, hard. A full body slam into a stone slab half buried in soil. You lie there, wheezing, vision flickering. Something inside you hurts. Your friends gather. They don't chirp or whimper or nuzzle. They just stand guard silent. You're not sure if they're protecting you or just waiting to see if you'll get up. You do, eventually. But your side is bruised now. Deep, it changes how you move. For a moment, you panic. What if this ruins the bounce, the hop? The one thing you've got that works. But then you try anyway. The pivot's slower, the tail whip less sharp. But you find a new version. One that curves tighter, a hop that becomes more of a rolling stride. And it still works. Because you've stopped trying to be the dinosaur you were. You're becoming the one you need to be now. Let's get one thing straight. Well, not you, obviously, but one thing about your world: when a predator comes, the herd doesn't wait to compare strategies. It just runs. Legs, thunder, tails whip the air, and half of them don't even know what direction they're headed. They just hope it's away. And you're not the fastest. You don't move like a sleek predator or a galloping herbivore. Your spine still hums wrong. Your foot still drags a little when you don't think about it. But here's the surprise: in the middle of a full-blown panic, your weird movement isn't a handicap. It's a superpower. You learned this the hard way. It started with thunder, not from the sky, but from the ground. A predator. A real one. Bigger than any you'd faced before. It didn't sneak. It didn't pounce. It arrived like a boulder dropped from space with a bellow so deep your chest bones shook. A tyrannosaur. Maybe not full-grown, but still the nightmare version of bad news. The herd gone in 2 seconds. Like they'd been pulled backward by a vacuum. You were in the middle of a drink, didn't even see it at first. Then you felt the vibrations in your toes, the hairs on your neck rose, your tail lifted without you telling it to. And then over your shoulder, a shadow with teeth. Instinct said, run, Body said, define run. So you launched. But not in a straight line. Never in a straight line. You veered left, immediately slipped on wet moss, overcorrected, bounced off a tree and spun into a breakneck side hop before your feet even knew what they were doing. You accelerated in jerks, your tail slashing the air behind you like a broken rudder. You weren't faster than the Tyrannosaur, but you were completely unpredictable. Odd fact of the day. Some ancient sharks swam in loops when hunting, not to chase prey but to confuse them first. Looks like you and they had similar logic. The Tyrannosaur lunged, missed. You'd turned again, not intentionally. A rock got in your way and redirected you like a pinball. Another hop, a pivot, a full-body flail down a shallow slope, and somehow impossibly you gained distance. You saw it from the corner of your eye. The others, the perfect walkers, the ones who'd mocked your sideways gait, were being caught. One by one. They'd run too cleanly, too predictably. The predator had no problem following their patterns. You had no pattern. You were chaos. You kept bouncing. Every few strides you added a juke, a twist, a feint. Sometimes you weren't even sure what your own body was going to do. Your tail whipped up dust. Your feet found traction where they shouldn't. And though you could feel the beast's breath behind you, hot, heavy like a furnace, it never caught you. Not because you were the strongest or the fastest, but because it couldn't guess your next move. Eventually, it gave up. Whether from confusion or frustration or just plain exhaustion, it turned back. You collapsed into a tangle of reeds, panting like a bellows, sides heaving, your back foot twitching from overuse. You lay there stunned, alive. Historians still debate whether large predators ever abandoned the chase purely from disorientation. There's no way to prove a fossil got confused, but if they could see you now, eyebrows would raise. And then you heard laughter. Not human, of course, not even close. But the dinosaur version, chirpy grunts, snorts a strange clicking rhythm. Your crooked-necked friend had followed from a distance. They'd seen it all. And now they stood at the ridge, silhouetted against the sky, visibly shaking with what can only be called joy. You stood limped, really, and grinned. And from that day forward, you weren't just the one who walks weird. You were the one who outran the tyrant. Others started noticing. Even the straight walkers. One particularly arrogant juvenile, all smooth lines and elegant posture, tried to copy you. You watched from a rock as he attempted a side hop. He dislocated his tail. It took 3 days for him to walk again without squealing. Your style wasn't just difficult, it was earned. Grown from years of stumbling, compensating, adjusting. You were living proof that the path to success isn't always direct. Sometimes it's bent, limping, unpredictable, and still faster than fear. That night the herd slept differently. Tighter circle. Fewer jokes about your gait. A few nods of recognition. You didn't need praise, but it was nice not to be mocked. You curled beside your friend, tail resting against theirs. The stars wheeled above in slow ancient arcs. Somewhere out there the predator still roamed. But you weren't scared anymore. You were fast in the wrong ways. And that made you right for this world. So here's what you've figured out by now. Moving forward is optional. Winning is optional. But looking absurd while doing both, that's practically your brand. You're older now. Not old, just old enough that your joints don't creak yet and your tail doesn't always whack low branches. The muscle memory has set in. Your whole body moves like it's surfing on decisions made 2 seconds ago. One leg has become the favorite not by choice but by necessity. You can sprint harder with it, plant it better, and when you pivot off that foot, you can send your body into something almost like flight. It's what you'd call the one-legged sprint technique. You learned it during a heat wave. The water holes dried up. Everything got slower except the need to survive. And you suddenly, very thirsty, were forced to cross the open plain. No cover, no hiding, just sun-bleached soil, distant shadows, and your wobbly sprint. Halfway through, something moved. Not a shadow. A shape. A fast, low-to-the-ground shape built for speed and business. Velociraptor. You froze briefly. Then you side-hopped, but this one didn't miss. It corrected. It anticipated. That's when you stopped hopping. and started launching. Your left leg hit the ground with everything you had. The right barely helped. You used your tail as counterweight, swinging it like a ship's anchor. The first leap covered more ground than it should have. The second was even better. You weren't hopping, now you were bounding. You moved like a pogo stick on its final warning. Each stride took all your weight, all your force, and hurled it forward through sheer momentum. Your right leg just tagged along for balance. Your tail curved in wide arcs behind you. Your spine flexed into a ripple with each launch. You didn't just dodge, you catapulted. Odd fact of the day, kangaroos can't walk backwards. Completely unrelated, but relevant if you ever invent time-traveling marsupial wrestling, which you shouldn't. The raptor behind you was fast, maybe even faster, but it was built for the chase. Your chase wasn't normal. You zigged at full speed, launched off rocks, kicked dust behind you. You even clipped a half-dead log and used it to vault midair in a twist that looked like falling until it wasn't. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had explosive, fast-twitch muscle fibers like cheetahs or more stamina-based structure like wolves. If they studied your bones, they'd say, both, somehow. You didn't just outrun the raptor. You lost it. And that was even more humiliating for it. It had followed prey into a straight field, no trees, no bushes, no turns. And it still failed. You reached the far edge of the plain, collapsed behind a dry log, and laughed so hard your tail twitched for 10 minutes. Not that the raptor could hear you. It was still out there, possibly wondering how it lost to someone whose run looked like a falling umbrella caught in wind. After that day, you trained that one-legged sprint. You'd circle around hills and leap from angles using the stronger leg like a springboard. Your right leg, it followed, offered sympathy, sometimes squeaked. And weirdly, the more you trained this awkward technique, the smoother it got. You started showing off. Your little band of misfits, crooked necks, soft-jawed, short-armed, even a new arrival who could only turn left gathered to watch you do stunt runs. You'd build up momentum in one-legged sprints, turn midair, and skid to a perfect stop. Well, perfect is generous. Once you landed in a tree. Another time you crashed into a turtle. But the idea was there. You became not just the fastest, you became fascinating. Others began to notice from afar, larger creatures, scavengers, the slow predators, even the feathered ones with eyes that glinted like puzzle pieces. They'd sit and watch your sprints, not because they wanted to copy you, they just couldn't believe what they were seeing. One-legged off-center, wrong angle brilliance. And it wasn't all solo anymore. Your misfit pack started integrating your moves. Crooked neck began to feint with shoulder dips mimicking your early zigzags. Soft jaw learned to trip backward in a way that triggered panic in nearby prey. Together, you hunted in angles. Never forward, never straight. Odd prey? Like psittacosaurs stood no chance. They tried to run away, but when 5 wrong-legged hunters came from 5 nonsense directions away, lost all meaning. The one-legged sprint wasn't just survival, it was strategy. It was identity. And one day, while sunbathing on a rock ledge, your tail twitching lazily and your strong leg extended, just so you felt something different. A weight behind your eyes. Not pain, not fear. Pride. You'd taken what should have been your doom, an unbalanced body, a sideways gait, and turned it into domination. Historians still debate whether pride existed in non-avian dinosaurs. There's no fossil record for feelings, but if bones could brag, yours would flex. That night you dreamed in motion. Not straight paths, not predator chases, just light arcs, gravity, and that glorious moment when your foot plants your weight shifts, and you launch yourself into the world like someone who never needed to walk straight in the first place. You don't hunt with grace, you hunt with confusion. The prey never knows what's coming, not because you're stealthy, not because you're silent, but because your movement is a complete betrayal of all logic. One minute you're to their left, next minute you're behind them sideways panting like you've been laughing through the whole pursuit. And it all starts because they can't read your rhythm. See, most predators telegraph their intent. Straight posture, forward momentum. Even the clever ones, raptors, the ones with the two big eyes and smug feathers, have a tell. But you're different. Your body doesn't march to any evolutionary drumbeat. It jerks. It bounces. It pivots off nothing. And prey hate that. The first time you used this to your advantage, it was a dry morning. You and your squad, let's call them the Weird Five, spotted a flock of smaller dinos pecking at roots. Normally, they'd sense a threat and scatter, but you approached differently. Crooked Neck looped around wide. Short Arm did their usual tree shuffle. You, you just wandered toward them like you were lost, leg dragging, spine tilted, tail bobbing like it was listening to music you couldn't hear. They noticed you, but they didn't run. Why would they? You looked broken, like a dinosaur in need of roadside assistance. Then, boom, one-legged launch. You hurled yourself forward, crooked and violent, and far faster than they'd expected. Your movement wasn't predatory, it was pandemonium. They panicked. But here's the thing about panic, it makes you predictable. They fled away from you, which would have worked against a normal hunter. But Crooked Neck was already there, just out of sight thanks to your coordinated misdirection. A few went left straight into Softjaw's accidental ambush spot. You all ate well that day. Odd fact of the day. Some prehistoric beetles could fake death for hours to avoid predators. You've met a few. You stepped on one once, it still didn't blink. Still. From that point forward, it became your tactic disorientation. Sometimes you'd zig right up to the prey, then freeze eyes wide like you'd forgotten why you were running. Other times you'd trip on a stick deliberately, and when the prey paused to stare confused, you'd launch like a broken trebuchet. Historians still debate whether any dinosaur species practiced deceptive hunting. There's fossil evidence of feints like mid-chase turnarounds, but nothing as organized as what you're doing. You, my friend, are either the first prank-based predator or the most beautifully broken hunting tool ever designed. Your group thrives. Not in numbers still, just 5 of you, and none of you fit for textbook diagrams, but in survival. And in laughter, or what counts for it. After a hunt, you often collapse into leafy piles. Short Arm rolls onto their back limbs, twitching. Crooked Neck does this wheezy throat sound that always ends in a hiccup. You lie on your side, tongue-out heartbeat, racing from the joy of it all. Not just the food, the game. It becomes almost ritualistic. You invent new maneuvers. Some work, some absolutely don't. There was the backwards leap trial. You tried to launch rear first but forgot your tail was still behind you. You flipped onto your neck and lay in a daze for a full hour, while Softjaw stared like you'd lost your last brain cell. You tried the spiral chase hoping to herd prey in concentric loops. It ended with everyone dizzy, including the prey who staggered into a bush and got stuck. Technically a success, but nobody felt good afterward. Still, you refined. Because if there's one thing your prey didn't have, it was chaos. And chaos wielded correctly is precision in disguise. Even as other predators scoffed those sleek theropods who'd line up for water like runway models, you knew your strength wasn't in form, it was in function. One day, you came across a new herd. Foreign faces, big eyes, straight spines. You approached cautiously. They didn't know your pack, didn't recognize your walk. At first, they laughed. You limped. Crooked Neck twitched. Softjaw chewed nothing for 10 straight minutes. You were dismissed as background noise. Then a predator struck. Not a big one, a nimble one. Fast, sleek, aimed directly at the herd's weakest. You saw it before they did. You launched, not toward the predator, but through the herd. Weaving, flailing, bouncing like a lightning storm in skin. Your momentum startled everyone. Prey scattered. Predator blinked one beat too late. You hit it sideways. Not hard enough to kill, but enough to knock it into a muddy pool. Your gang closed in, snapping, hissing, circling like vultures on stilts. The predator fled, humiliated. After that, the herd didn't laugh. They stared, watched how you pivoted when you turned. Noted how your stronger leg planted first every time. They didn't try to imitate you, but they kept their distance, with respect. That night, under thick cloud cover and the soft buzz of tree bugs, you lay belly up, tail curled, one foot twitching in your sleep. Your friends dozed around you. Crooked necks snored through their throat hole again. And somewhere out there in the darkness, something fast and sharp-footed remembered how your lunge made them doubt their own movement. How your chaos made their strategy crumble. You weren't just fast, you were unreadable. And that was all the advantage you'd ever need. So here's a fun thing you didn't know you'd be famous for: footprints. Not hunting technique, not survival, not speed. Just the weird, squiggly trails your feet leave behind. You've been creating them your whole life, obviously. Every time you sprint, stumble, side hop, or accidentally faceplant into a creek bed, you're leaving behind a breadcrumb trail of chaotic motion pressed into the earth. But what you didn't know, what no dinosaur ever really knows, is that millions of years later, some very confused paleontologists are going to lose sleep over these prints because they make no sense. Fossils show straight patterns mostly. Herd movement, migratory strides, hunting charges. But your tracks, they tell a different story, a strange story, a wrong story. Imagine this. A future researcher stumbles on your trail frozen in time. One set of prints cuts sharp left, then hooks back, right, then abruptly halts as if the dinosaur spun 180 degrees and did a little jig. Then this is their favorite part. Your strong leg leaves deep, perfect impressions while the weaker one barely touches the ground in little smudgy half-prints. To them, it looks like two dinosaurs, two different size theropods, one chasing the other, possibly fighting. Historians still debate whether this fossil formation indicates conflict, playful interaction, or some kind of locomotor malfunction. A few bold researchers have suggested maybe the dinosaur had a limp. They're not wrong, but they're not right either, because your limp isn't a flaw. It's a pattern one that doesn't fit the known rhythm of Cretaceous locomotion. It challenges assumptions about stride regularity, directional consistency, and even predator-prey dynamics. You, my asymmetrical legend, are confusing the scientific method. Odd fact of the day. In 2016, scientists thought they found a dinosaur sitting down because of some odd hip impressions. Turns out it was just a mudslide. Fossils lie, but yours, they tell tall tales. Let's jump back. You and your pack have been exploring a new zone. Rocky terrain, more open space, fewer trees, harder ground. Prints stick better here. Every time you run, you etch a chaotic roadmap into the crust. One morning, while bounding across a slope, you side-hop a little too far and end up skidding in a spiral. Your tail carves a perfect crescent trench. You lie there, winded, staring up at the clouds. Crooked Neck approaches, takes one look, and does their version of a shrug. The others hop down to inspect your trail. And this is when the weird part happens. They start tracing your steps. Not for fun. For learning. They mimic your swerve, your dig step, even your tail drag. Their own prints overlay yours, copies of a broken system. But it works. They stumble less than they used to. They keep up with you longer. The one who could only turn left now turns mid-hop thanks to a new tail whip you invented during a fall. Historians still debate whether non-avian dinosaurs could teach or simply model behavior. But if anyone had watched you right now, they'd see learning in motion. Clumsy, chaotic, beautiful motion. And in that rocky clearing, your legacy leaves a layered fossil record. Not just a single set of footprints, but a cluster. An overlapping, weaving tapestry of misfit movement. Of course, to the future paleontologist, it will look like a disaster site. They'll theorize, was this a kill zone? Were these tracks from a predator circling prey? Were these multiple species converging in a moment of battle? They'll never guess it was 5 crooked dinosaurs playing. Because play doesn't fossilize. And yet, there it is. You start noticing other creatures following your trail. Not predators too proud, but smaller dinosaurs. Observers. They tiptoe behind the scenes, trying out your angled paths. One even fails a pivot and tumbles into a shrub. You pretend not to notice. The world is watching you, not because you lead, but because you move differently. You aren't fast in the conventional sense. Your straight-line speed could be beaten by a hatchling with caffeine, but you can start and stop with impossible timing. You can fake one way, pivot the other, and bounce off obstacles in ways that make straight walkers stare in disbelief. And your feet, the ones that leave inconsistent, warped looping marks, are rewriting what speed even means. One afternoon, as you rest under the shadow of a boulder tail wrapped around your legs, you look back at your day's path. The prints are everywhere, bent shallow, deep sliced by toe drags, and occasionally punctuated by full-body skids. It looks like a mess. But to you, it's a map of mastery. Oddly enough, your prints do something no one else's do. They disappear. Not literally, but observationally. They loop back on themselves, making predators think you turned when you didn't. Once you lost a hungry dromaeosaur by using your own prints as a decoy, leading it in a spiral until it gave up exhausted. Your footprints like your body lie, and that's why they work. At night, the wind rolls over the hard-packed earth. It won't erase your trail tonight, and part of you hopes it doesn't. Because even if no one remembers your name, even if time turns your bones into mystery, those prints, they'll tell the story of a dinosaur who refused to move the right way and somehow still got everywhere they needed to go. You've never fit in, but now you've built a place that fits you. Your crooked walk has carved a wide loop around the marshy edge of the forest. You know every tilt in the terrain, every slippery slope, every ridge where the moss gives way to stone. It's not territory in the traditional sense. There's no borders, no markers, just rhythm. A route only you and your awkward legs can follow without falling flat. But today, something shifts. A new scent rides the wind. Strange, sharp, bitter, like wet ash and raw hide. You don't recognize it, and that's not good. Even your tail, normally relaxed in a slow pendulum, tenses into a crooked arc. You bounce up the nearest rise legs, slipping slightly in the dew. The rest of your crew is just ahead, crooked neck, scanning the horizon with their sideways tilt short arm, pawing at the mud with two good claws and one stubby one, soft jaw chewing. Something again. It's probably a stick. It's always a stick. You grunt. They freeze. Even Softjaw spits out the stick. Whatever's out there, it's big and smart. Historians still debate whether apex predators coordinated hunts or simply followed chaos. But if you've learned anything from your own success, it's that movement tells you everything. And the movement coming your way, too silent, too smooth. You gather the weird five in a cluster beneath a vine-wrapped log and gesture with your snout. A retreat, a silent backtrack. But then snap. A stick cracking under weight, followed by another. Not fast, not panicked. Stalking. You launch into a sprint, not a way around. You pivot off your strong leg tail, swinging wide to balance and circle the noise, like a question mark with claws. The others split off, fanning into the side-hopping formation you've all practiced dozens of times now. What emerges is unexpected. Not one predator. 3. Not big enough to be apex, but smart enough to know they're stronger together. Maybe they've learned from you. That's a troubling thought. Odd fact of the day. Prehistoric mammals sometimes formed loose temporary alliances, rat-sized creatures nesting near larger ones for warmth and scraps. Looks like the dinosaurs may have done the same. Lucky you. You've dealt with single threats before, even pairs, but a trio, they flank you. You bounce backward on instinct, your tail dragging a swirl across the dust. The nearest predator, lean, feathered, and scarred, lunges. You side-hop, pivot, plant launch. Your foot strikes a rock edge. You nearly roll your ankle, and that's when you realize they're trying to herd you. They don't know how you move, not exactly, but they've watched, studied, and now they're testing whether your rhythm has limits. You want to laugh. You don't have a rhythm. You are the limit. So you change tempo, a sudden stop, a leg drag, a double pivot hop. The predator chasing you overshoots by meters and face plants into a shrub. You spin and take off in the opposite direction, Crooked neck intercepts one of the others mid-charge, not with teeth but with a weird neck feint that causes it to backpedal in sheer confusion. Softjaw runs in crooked circles, confusing everyone, including himself. It's chaos, yes, but coordinated chaos. The predators pause, pant, blink. This isn't working for them. And then you do something new. You double hop. Not just your classic one-legged burst, but a hard launch followed by a mid-air tail whip that redirects your landing angle. You bounce twice, change direction twice, and are suddenly behind your attackers. They freak out. One skitters into a boulder. Another bolts into a shallow ravine. The last one, Scarface, stands frozen. So you charge, not to fight, to baffle. You run straight almost, then pivot mid-stride. A near somersault. You swipe dust with your tail and kick a clod of dirt into its face. It flinches, blinks, and turns tail. Gone. All three gone. Your crew regroups. Short arm high steps proudly. Softjaw finds a new stick. You collapse into a sitting pose, tail crooked under your legs, breath heavy. Historians still debate whether dinosaur species ever displayed coordinated evasion maneuvers. They'll find no fossils proving it. But your prints scattered across this battlefield like drunken hieroglyphs might be the first real evidence. Because the path you have walked, never straight, never smooth, has taught you something even predators can't calculate. When you're unpredictable, you're unbeatable. The rest of the day, you walk your circuit in silence. Not out of fear, but reflection. Each step presses your unique signature deeper into the mud. Not a limp, not a flaw, a legacy. A movement style so strange it became a system. Your gait doesn't just get you through life, it gets you past things that should have stopped you. And as twilight bleeds into the canopy, and the first stars peep through the gaps, you lie down among the ferns, surrounded by your strange little family. You don't dream of running straight. You never did. You dream of curving trails and dusty prints and the way your tail carves commas in the earth behind you. Because if survival's a sentence, you're not the period. You're the twist in the middle. You're not pretty. You're not graceful. But when it comes to survival, you're better than perfect. The forest is quieter now. Drier, too. A shift in climate, you can feel it in your bones. Trees shed earlier. Insects bite harder. Water holes shrink. And predators, they get desperate. That's when the sleek ones return. You've seen them before long, snouts thin, hips, legs like whips, and the kind of eyes that never blink when they look at you. They move like arrows, straight, fast, silent, beautiful, deadly. They arrive at dusk, two of them, not working together but circling the same pond where your crew's been drinking. You spot the glint of one's scales in the twilight and freeze. Crooked neck steps forward, tail-tight muscles twitching. You whistle. Well, not a real whistle, just a throat-clicking noise your pack's developed over time. One short click. Pause. Two clicks. It means scatter slowly. Bounce ready. Your crew listens. Softjaw backs into the foliage. Short arm hides behind a lopsided tree, blending in by sheer awkwardness. You stay where you are. Visible. Exposed. Because you've learned something about perfect predators, they expect perfect prey. And you, my lopsided masterpiece, are not perfect prey. You start walking, not toward them, not away, just diagonally. Not like you're leaving, not like you're a threat, just moving. You drag one leg, tilt your tail, stumble slightly over a root, and pretend to chew bark. They watch. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs could feign injury to lure predators or distract them from others. You don't know what the researchers would say, but this sure feels like bait. One predator flinches forward. A test. You keep chewing, then hop sideways like you've forgotten where your own mouth is. The predator pauses. The other one darts forward in earnest, fast, decisive. But you were already shifting. You slam your strong leg into the earth pivot, wide tail slicing through air like a half-silent whip. You launch, not away, at the hunter. Odd fact of the day. Some modern opossums drop dead on purpose to avoid attack. You don't play dead, you play wrong. The predator swerves to avoid your chaotic approach and overshoots. You twist mid-run, veer around, and sprint straight past it, leading it in a half-circle back toward your crew. That's when Short Arm pounces more by accident than strategy and collides sideways with the predator's hind leg. The sleek one tumbles, not hurt, but now it's confused. Crooked Neck bursts from the left and headbutts a tree so hard the bark explodes. It's not aimed at the predator, but it feels like a message. And that's the thing: you don't need force. You have fluster. You and your crew are a living glitch in the predator's algorithm. The first sleek one retreats, growling. The second follows, slower, eyes never leaving you. You drop into a seated crouch, panting, your tail still twitching like it hasn't caught up with the rest of your body. Crooked Neck collapses beside you, gasping through their nostrils in what could be terror or delight. Soft Jaw appears with a triumphant hiss and a new stick. Short Arm raises one tiny claw like a salute. You didn't just escape, you shattered expectations. Later that night, you walk alone. Not because you feel lonely, but because the stars are too quiet and the air too thick to stay still. You follow your old trail, that zigzag loop of broken footprints and tail-drag furrows. You find yourself tracing past battles, old sprints, remembered stumbles. Then you find it. The carcass of something big, not one of yours. Maybe a passing ankylosaur. Whatever it was, it's been half-eaten. Something fierce did the killing, but didn't stay long. Around the body tracks, three kinds. One set sleek and shallow. The arrow walkers. The other two, well, they look familiar. You study them. There's a one-legged launch mark, a deep pivot gouge, a tail drag that curves in an S shape. You blink. You sniff the air. You step forward slowly. Someone's copying you. Historians still debate whether learned movement patterns could pass between unrelated species. But here's a chilling thought. What if one of the predators adapted your chaos? You walk the circle twice more, measuring prints with your own. The resemblance isn't exact, but it's close. Something is learning your rhythm. The idea should frighten you. Instead, you smile, because that means they're guessing. And as long as they're guessing, they can never quite catch you. You didn't plan to become a long-distance runner. Nobody does. But here you are, lurching through a swamp plain that wasn't supposed to flood this early in the season, lungs burning, legs flinging mud like angry punctuation marks. What started as a simple foraging morning, just you, Crooked Neck, and a chance at dry ferns, has turned into a marathon escape through terrain that swallows the balance of every normal-footed creature. But not you. No, you were built for this. Well, not built exactly. More like cobbled together by prehistoric trial and error. But oddly enough, your sideways gait and tail-swinging counterbalance are perfect for swamp running. Behind you, something huge crashes through the flooded brush. Maybe a Dinosaur. Maybe a hungry, wet, miserable something that decided today was the day it tries running in waist-high water. Poor choice, because here's where your awkwardness thrives. You don't push through the water like everyone else, you push past it. Every hop and sideways vault lifts you just above the muck. Your tail, heavy but flexible, carves the water behind you like an oar. Each splash is strategic if completely improvised. It's the closest thing to grace you've ever felt. Crooked Neck flounders behind, grunting with every step. You don't slow down. You turn a wide, low pivot that sends a fan of mud up into the air and begin herding them leftward with frantic whistles and tail flicks. Because now, you're not running alone. You're leading. Historians still debate whether non-alpha dinosaurs could assume leadership roles without physical dominance. There's no clear fossil evidence of rank shifting, but if anyone could pull it off, it's the one who runs like a panic attack made flesh. The swamp deepens. Footing worsens. But you adjust. You stop sprinting in wide bounds and start skipping, not like a child, more like someone learning how to walk on lava. You plant your strong leg hard angle, your weaker one sideways to stabilize and bounce from root to root, using small dry patches like lily pads. Behind you, Crooked Neck imitates, not perfectly, but enough. Short Arm squeals every time they sink, but still follows. Soft Jaw nearly face plants into a tree root, recovers, and immediately starts chewing the root, naturally, and the beast behind you still chasing. Odd fact of the day. Some prehistoric birds nested directly over water using floating vegetation to support their eggs. Apparently, some things figured out how to work with unstable footing before it was trendy. You reach the shallow ridge, a place you've only visited once before. Drier, sloped, slippery with moss but solid enough for a final push. You take it. Launch yourself up, one-legged tail lashing feet scrabbling. You don't think, you just go. And you hear it behind you, the predator struggling. Every step it takes slows, sinks, sucks. You don't look back. Crooked neck bursts out of the water behind you, soaked, wheezing but alive. Then short arm covered in algae, looking absolutely done with today. Soft jaw emerges, last stick still in mouth. You all collapse in a wet pile of steam and breath. Below, the predator stops. It watches for a long moment, then turns and disappears back into the reeds. You won, not by outrunning it in a straight line, but by navigating the mess better than anything else alive. You lay there, tail twitching in satisfaction. That's when you notice the prints again. Yours crook deep on the left, shallow on the right, occasionally dotted with tail drags and awkward pivots. But there's another set, newer. Behind yours, lighter, almost mimicking. You follow them with your eyes as they snake through the shallow edges of the swamp. Same odd rhythm, same weight-shifted bounce. Whoever made them is smaller. Lighter, but trying to do what you do. You grunt. Crooked neck sees it too. You both say nothing. But now the question sticks in your brain like a burr. Who's watching you closely enough to learn your pattern? And more importantly, can they do it better? Historians still debate whether dinosaurs ever experienced a sense of legacy. But tonight, as you curl under a rock overhang and let sleep pull you into darkness, you wonder what kind of fossil trail you're leaving behind. Not in stone, but in others. Because if someone else is starting to run crooked and fast, you'll have to stay stranger, stay faster, stay yourself. You're not alone anymore, not just in a social sense, but in a legacy sense. Because somewhere out there, another one has begun to move like you. You don't know who they are. You've never seen them, but you've seen the signs, tracks carved into softened ground, crooked and bouncing, not yours, but so close it makes your tail twitch. And they're getting better. Today, the trail loops across the high ridge. It's your ridge, your old training run. Only now the prints aren't just mimicking, they're improving. Smoother arcs, tighter pivots, less skidding. Whoever they are, they're faster than you were when you first figured this out. You don't feel threatened. You feel responsible. Crooked neck notices too. They lean in to sniff the edge of a heel mark. It's fresh, hours old at most. Short arm doesn't get it, just stomps through it like a muddy splash party. Soft jaw tries to taste the print. Classic. But you stare at the trail like it's a message. And maybe it is. Because legacy doesn't have to speak to be heard. That afternoon, you do something you've never done. You leave a trail on purpose. Not just by walking, but by exaggerating your steps. Deep left footfalls. Deliberate tail sweeps. A clear message pressed into dirt and moss. This is how I move. It's not a challenge. It's an invitation. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had a sense of intentional communication beyond vocal calls and display feathers. But here you are making a map in mud, hoping a stranger will read it and understand the shape of who you are. That night, you return to your usual sleeping site, a hollow beneath wind-bent trees, and curl close with your crew. Crooked neck rests their skull against yours, as they often do when thinking. Short arm digs a small pit and promptly forgets why. Soft jaw, asleep, already murmurs a chirp and reflexively grips a stick. You dream again, but not of yourself this time. You dream of someone smaller, lighter, weaving through the trees with that same ridiculous stride, but with new twists, faster flicks, tighter turns. A confidence born not of injury, but inheritance. They aren't broken. They're built from your brokenness. Odd fact of the day. Some ancient cephalopods developed coiled shells not for defense but for buoyancy. Evolution doesn't just fix problems, it sometimes floats above them entirely. The next morning, the trails changed. Another set of prints runs alongside your deliberate ones, slightly overlapping, mimicking, following your exaggerated pivots. You feel your heart thump not in fear, in pride. And this time, there's something new. A strange half-circle pattern you've never made before. A tail swing mark, mid-hop. You trace it with your snout. Clever. It looks like the work of someone adapting the bounce into something else, adding rotation during airtime. You try it. It works. You do it again. Even better. The movement is so natural, so clean, it's almost insulting. You glance around as if expecting the stranger to be watching from the bushes, giggling. No one's there, but the impact remains. Your awkward sprint style has passed from survival strategy to blueprint, a genetic quirk that now shapes the way others learn to live. So you train harder, not out of rivalry, out of joy. Crooked Neck notices. Joins in. You both take turns inventing new moves, an angled skip pivot, a double feint hop, even an uphill backwards launch, which goes very badly. Short arm runs straight into a tree. Still, the laughter is real. The dirt is alive with new footprints, layer upon layer of motion. The next few days become a blur of sprints, skids, and shared tracks. The forest begins to bear the stamp of your legacy. And one morning, you finally see them, the one who's been following you. They emerge from the edge of the ferns as you land from a wild triple pivot sprint. You freeze mid-skid. Your crew falls silent. Even Soft Jaw drops their stick. It's a juvenile. Juvenile. Slightly smaller than you were at their age. Same crooked stride, same tilted stance, tints. But with a spark of something else, a built-in confidence. They don't flinch. They don't panic. They just smile. Or whatever the dinosaur version of a smile is, a soft chirp and a bounce that looks oddly like a greeting. You chirp back, then take off running. Not away, not to lose them, but to teach. They follow. You sprint in spirals, hop over rocks, twist midair. The juvenile copies not perfectly, but with uncanny speed. It's not mimicry, it's adaptation. You stop on a ledge, heart-hammering tail quivering from the run. They skid to a stop beside you. And in that moment, the forest isn't yours anymore. It's ours. You the first crooked one who outran predators. Them the first one born knowing how. It should be a moment of triumph. Legacy confirmed. Motion passed on like fire between sticks. And yet, something keeps itching behind your eyes. A question you can't shake. Was it ever really a deformity? Back when you were small, when your legs didn't line up and your tail dragged behind like an afterthought, everyone saw you as defective, something that shouldn't survive. But now, with younger ones mimicking your every move, sprinting better than you ever did, was it really a mistake? Or were you just ahead of schedule? Historians still debate whether evolutionary traits like yours arise from damage or from design. One side argues it's a genetic fluke, an error repeated by chance. The other insists it's a pressure-shaped adaptation. Both sides cite fossils. Neither can prove you. You think about this as you walk. Yes, walk, not run, not bounce, not launch. Just a quiet, thoughtful limp along the crest of a dried riverbed. Below, cracked mud stretches like reptile skin. You pause. Scan the distance. The forest is quiet today, like it's listening. You find another set of tracks, new ones. But not yours. Not even your students. These are strange. Not crooked exactly, but interrupted. Like something with your pattern tried to walk straight and failed. The gait breaks every few paces, stumbles, hesitates. It's not someone copying you. It's someone unsure how to move. And that hits you harder than you expected. Because it means your style, your beautiful lurching side-skipping rhythm, has entered a phase no one controls. It's no longer just you. It's not even a pack style anymore. It's spreading, but it's changing too. You remember the others, the straight walkers who tried to imitate you and got tail sprains and bruised egos? Maybe they kept trying. Maybe their young ones did too. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there now carries a version of your movement, not because they chose to, but because they were born into it. Odd fact of the day. There's a prehistoric bird called Confucius ornis that had a long tail only in males, and scientists still don't know what it was for. Flight display balance. Sometimes nature doesn't need a reason, it just goes for it. You lie down beside the prince. Not because you're tired, but because you need to think on ground level. You study the gaps, the hesitations, the little toe drags. Someone out there is struggling the way you did, but they're not alone like you were, because now they've got your trail to follow. Later that day, you gather your crew. Crooked Neck tilts their head in that listening pose. Short Arm flaps their limbs like they're stretching for a fight. Soft Jaw finally has two sticks in their mouth and refuses to drop either. You walk them to the riverbed, show them the prince. No one speaks. Not that you could if you tried. But the tension is shared. This is bigger than a new hunt or an old trick. This is movement as message. Historians still debate whether dinosaur culture ever existed. Was their learned behavior passed from generation to generation, or were all instincts born into the bone? You've lived long enough to know. The answer doesn't matter. Because when you side hop now, others follow. Not because they have to, but because it works. That night you return to the old training ridge. Your favorite place. The slope where you once discovered how far your left leg could really launch you if you just leaned into the fall. You stand at the top, tail curled, breath steady. Behind you, your crew waits. And behind them, three more. Not students, not exactly, but watchers. Ones who've seen you enough to start figuring things out for themselves. You run. Not to show off, to show how. Down the slope, left pivot, tail whip, one-legged sprint, mid-air twist, bounce, skid, controlled fall, recovery hop. You do the whole set in one fluid chaos stream, and when you stop, the dust rises around your legs like applause. The watchers try, they fail, then they try again. And this time, one of them doesn't fall. You sit down, tail twitching. Not because you're done, but because your part of the rhythm has become their opening note. They'll do things differently. Maybe better, maybe not. But you can already tell they're not just copying you. They're evolving you. And that means you've done something more permanent than leaving prints in stone. You've reshaped what speed can mean. Not in a straight line, but in every beautiful broken curve of the path. The path winds differently now, not just because the terrain has shifted, though it has. The rains came late this season, carving deep grooves into hillsides, turning grasslands into tangled mats of reeds. But the real difference isn't the ground, it's you. You're slowing down, not by much, but enough. Your strong leg, the one you've leaned on all your life, hums with ache after long sprints. Your tail doesn't whip as sharply, and when you twist mid-hop, it takes a beat longer to recover your balance. You're not broken, you're weathered, and still somehow leading. Your pack notices. They don't say anything. Crooked Neck lingers closer to your side. Soft Jaw, perhaps sensing a change, has been chewing less wood and watching you more. Short Arm imitates your walk exactly now, not for practice, but maybe out of habit. And then there's the others, the new ones. They trail you like satellites, not in tight formation, but always nearby. Mimicking your runs, studying your bounces, inventing their own chaos. You watch one vault a rock spin twice and land in a gallop that's faster than anything you've done. It's thrilling. It's terrifying. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs could grasp mortality. There's no fossil of a thought, no imprint of a fear. But there are patterns, elder tracks that separate from the herd, gentle slopes worn smooth by repeat rests. Maybe you're becoming one of those patterns now. One morning you rise slowly. A stiffness in your lower back that doesn't shake off with a hop. You try to sprint anyway, and though your mind pushes, your body sags midair like a deflated leap. You recover. Of course you do. You always do. But afterward, you just walk. And for once, no one laughs. Instead, they follow at your pace. Not because they can't go faster, but because you're still ahead. It's then stepping carefully through reeds that brush your knees that you see it. A full trail. Not yours, not the watcher's either, but a third pattern, a hybrid track. Deep, strong pivots like yours, but with new spacing. More upright, less tail drag. They're running like you, but cleaner. You blink. Lower your snout to inspect. And there in the middle of one print is something that shakes you more than any predator ever did. A faint mark from a feather. Just one. Pressed lightly into the mud. An afterthought, but undeniable. Feathers. Historians still debate how widespread feathers were among non-avian dinosaurs. Some say they were rare decorative. Others argue they were functional insulating. But you're not interested in the feather. You're interested in the run. Whoever made this is faster than you ever were. They've taken your crooked rhythm and refined it. Tail held higher steps. Crisper. The bounce minimized, but still there in every corner of the turn. They're not mocking you. They're continuing you. You stand a while breathing in the damp air, letting that idea sink beneath your skin like sunlight through moss. Then, without a word, you hop sideways, just once, just a little. The motion is rough, not clean, but it still lifts your heart. Your crew follows not with their usual wild bursts, but in a flowing loop that mimics your first strange circuits from seasons ago, the original route, the crooked path. Odd fact of the day. Some ancient crocodiles walked upright on two legs not because they were trying to be dinosaurs, but because they found it easier. Nature doesn't care about categories. It just follows what works. And your movement works, even now slower, older, lopsided. Because you're no longer sprinting just to survive. You're moving to teach, to imprint, to leave a shape in the world that lasts longer than your bones. That evening, by the glow of the fading sun, you gather beneath the same ridge you once stumbled down sideways, panicking into greatness. Now it's a place of gathering. The younger ones form a semicircle. You demonstrate the side hop again slowly, purposefully. The tail sweep, the plant foot, the feint, then the launch. They repeat it. Better than you. And that's the point. You lie back breathing slow. One eye on the stars, the other on the prints still being pressed behind you. And as the night breathes around you warm and buzzing, you finally accept the truth. You weren't the mistake. You were the prototype. Tonight, everything is still too still. The wind doesn't move through the canopy the way it used to. The bugs seem quieter. Even your own breath feels louder than it should. You lie flat under a cluster of ferns, one eye open, listening. Not for predators, not for thunder. You're listening for footsteps. Not yours, not crooked necks, not your little pack who are now asleep in the hollow behind you. No, you're listening for them. The runner. The one you haven't seen but have felt through footprints, through bent reeds, through the way the forest seems to shift and tilt just a little differently when they're nearby. They're faster now. You know this because earlier today you found a set of prints near the high ridge that not only matched your signature bounce but extended it. They'd added a turn you hadn't invented, a double pivot, executed clean, without a single skid mark. You'd smiled, but it was a slow, tired smile. Because your own pivot now feels heavy. You're slower. Your strong leg, once your slingshot to survival, now aches even when you sleep. The bounce that saved you so many times has turned into a lurch. You don't pivot so much as drift. But you're not afraid, because this was always the plan, even if you didn't know it. They're still out there. Learning, adapting, reshaping what began with a mistake, or a gift, or both. So tonight, you wait. And finally, from the far side of the ridge, there's the slap-slap whirl of fast, crooked footfalls. Light but certain. A shape in the moonlight, smaller, leaner, perfectly imbalanced in motion. They stop a few paces from you. You don't speak. You don't move. You just lift your head slowly like the weight of memory rests behind your eyes. They chirp. Once. You chirp back. Then silently, you both begin the run. Not a race, not a chase, a ritual. You lead slowly at first. Your bounce has softened, but it still has purpose. You carve through the open field in wide arcs, your tail tracing half moons through the grass. Behind you, the runner follows, echoing your movements but adding flair. Their hops are tighter, their turns sharper. They jump logs you now go around, and that's exactly how it should be. You run together, curving across the ancient earth like two brushstrokes from the same trembling hand. The stars above drift with you. The wind returns, finally pushing through the trees like applause. Odd fact of the day. In some species of sea turtles, the oldest females don't return to shore. Not because they can't, but because they no longer need to. Their work is done. They let others carry forward the pattern. You stop at the edge of the hollow. The others are still asleep, curled in their awkward, familiar knots. Crooked neck twitches, slightly dreaming of sharp turns and muddy escapes. Short arm has somehow ended up upside down again. Softjaw has chewed their stick down to a stump. You sit beside the runner. They don't speak. They just rest their tail against yours. No one taught you this gesture, but somehow they knew. You look out into the dark, your breath slower now, your heart steadier. Not because you're giving up, but because you don't have to run anymore. They will. They already are. And the world, tilted and wild, will keep making room for crooked steps, for uneven gaits, for side hoppers and limpers and bounce sprinters who never asked to be fast but became it anyway. Because of you. Tomorrow maybe you'll move slower, maybe not at all, but it won't matter. Because your shadow is out there now, longer, faster, stranger. Still running. Still impossible to catch. The story of the dinosaur that couldn't walk straight but still outran predators is one of transformation, improvisation, and legacy. Born with a gait that defied survival logic, you stumbled through your earliest days clumsy and crooked in a world built for speed and symmetry. But through instinct, adaptation, and sheer persistence, you turned your flaw into rhythm, your imbalance into strategy. Each section followed your journey from helpless hatchling to master of chaos, from surviving single predators to leading a pack of similarly unconventional companions. You invented movements no one had seen before, side hops, one-legged sprints, double feint pivots, and along the way baffled every predator that underestimated you. Fossils of your prints puzzled future scientists, while your techniques confused prey and inspired mimics. As you aged, the world shifted. Younger dinosaurs began to pick up your patterns. Not just your pack, but others. Some were better, some adapted the bounce into something sleeker. You felt your own strength fade, even as your influence spread. By the end, you were not the fastest anymore. But you were the first. Your crooked movement, once dismissed, had become its own evolutionary feature. Your legacy ran on through younger legs, sharper turns, and new voices. And so, in the twilight of your journey, you no longer needed to prove anything. Your path had already been carved into the world.